The first tap of a conductor's wand. The first rivet in a mile-high tower. The master link at the genesis of a never-ending chain. The moment a single empty canvas meets a singular master stroke. There is no one thing. Because now, there are many. Because soon, there will be more. Because one is ever the beginning. Like the first link in an infinite chain, or the first rivet in the tallest skyscraper. The master stroke is found in the masterpiece. What will you begin?
Hey everybody, welcome to, I guess we're episode 68 now of, episode 68. How much time has passed of World Blockchain Roundtable. And today's topic, we'll be talking about making the world better with blockchain and decentralized systems. So today we've got Joe Dragon, our usual original master of ceremonies has passed the total to me today by your votes. We got Dave, aka Distant of Den.social fame.
What is up?
Davis, aka Litecoin Lisa. And we've got Satoshi Sean, entrepreneur and everyone's friend. And as I probably already said, I'm Greg Rivet and Cypherpunk. All right, so just a little quick update from last week. We had, let's see, hosts from last week will receive 133 lot. Each topic contributed from last week will receive 22 lot. Last week's theme on implications of blockchain to recorded history was nominated by Joe, so he will receive an additional 22 lot. And these ownership tokens, as always, come with perpetual passive income, free edits, and governance votes. So
I also want to claim that I ran such a tight ship last week that we ended within the 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. So I want to claim my extra lot.
Oh, there we go. There we go. I will make no such promises that I will not get enthralled with the conversation and let things overrun this week by accident again. So I guess it was blockchain fundamentals last week, wasn't it?
I think
yeah. Okay.
Yes.
In case.
I wasn't sure if it was a deja vu or a glitch in the matrix going on. I was just going to go with it. Everything else is confusing today in the world.
I noticed y'all made a time when I wasn't here. It was like, I was like, well, look at that. 1 minute,
so,
1 hour and 30, like 2 minutes or 4. I was like,
yeah.
Even under. What do you know?
Indeed. So before we get into how we're all going to save the world with blockchains, and I say all, I mean everybody listening too, because it's on you as well. Let's talk about current events. What's going on? What are people interested in today?
I have something. So there are a couple, and it's maybe not like say something that you'll see in front page New York Times or anything, but there were two recent odd exposures by people high up at the Fed. One of them was specifically talking about CBDCs and why the U.S. by all intents and purposes shouldn't need a CBDC unless we're intending to track people. It makes sense in China, he said. But if we aren't wanting to just track people, there's already things that do what they're claiming this CBDC will do, Venmo and other things, right? So that was interesting. And
then he jumped out a window.
Yes,
if only.
And the second one was, and I don't know when he gave this talk, but he was someone from the Fed again talking about, and it was almost like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. That
don't say that. Lisa will get very angry.
Okay.
No Monty Python references at all.
Really?
Oh, I don't know them.
Because they're in Jackson Hole right now, aren't they? Aren't they doing something up there?
Oh, really?
Isn't this a Jackson Hole time with the weirdly non-sexual sound city name that nonetheless sounds sexual?
That was last week, wasn't it?
So anyway, this guy Michael Barr talking about incumbents, big companies, big entities. Abusing regulation to stifle innovation in the U.S., which is obviously what it's set up for. It's entirely what its purpose is. It isn't to protect you. For God's sakes, It's not going to protect you from something like any of the many things that have happened in crypto, or any of the things that have happened on Wall Street in the past,
Right.
100
This
years.
is all like, they're going to treat us like dumb rubes as an advantage point, right? Like this is the same thing as the income limitations on being a qualified investor.
Yeah, and I'll call it out again.
I
tweeted it, but I'll call it out again that the bankers were scared shitless about Bitcoin. So they went to the Senate Banking Committee, we have to ban this. We have to ban this, right? Mm-hmm. I talked to them back then. I talked to Manchin back then, right? It's like, you can't ban it. Number two, it's U.S. jobs. This is innovation. This is software. You need to protect this. It'll open up new markets.
Right. And there's the fear of innovation, right? Like, it's going to happen somewhere.
Yeah, the VCs got then upset when the Hydra blew up and all these projects came out, and they realized that people were making money outside of their system, that they were creating value, that these projects, these startups have found a way, let's say utility. I'm going to sell utility instead of selling equity in my company. Right. And they don't like that. And they've essentially killed it so far.
You guys remember when Kickstarter was big and there were all these amazing things getting released and built? Like, I don't know if you guys remember this band called April Smith and the Great Picture Show.
Nope.
They were fantastic. Funded their whole first album. She needed a big band behind her, though, and they needed to record a big band in order to do the album. Mm-hmm. They funded that whole thing with Kickstarter. And this is of course before they introduced the regulations around what kind of fair fundraising could be done on a crowdsourced platform, right? But before, people were just giving their money because they wanted to see people try to build something. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, that's what investment's about. When crypto came about, decentralization was the key. We thought, nobody can really censor this, right? So we started building shit and getting funded for it, and people bought it because they wanted to see things come into existence, right? So.
We did that.
They had to shut that down, right? Like, of course they had to shut that down. God forbid people just pool their resources and create things in the world without us saying it's okay first.
I was lucky to be able to do some of that back when you could, use those platforms. And a band I used to manage, we did an album that way. Totally. We had a regional number of fans, and we had new music, and enough people wanted to see it made. Just to have it exist, they were like, "Sure, let's go."
Right.
Maybe
by the SEC's
we'll owe you a house party or something. That kind of thing.
By the SEC's logic, selling a single on a burned CD is a way to sell a security if you're using that money to raise money to do a proper recording.
Yeah, they've really turned into kind of just a data source. You know what I mean? You have something you want to take to market or make. It's like, how many pre-orders can you get before we give you money? Real VCs and they move in. It's like, oh, we got 100,000 people put in for pre-orders for it, funded it so they could get the first, first run copy of it or whatever it is. And then 100,000, that's not bad for pre-orders. Yeah, we'll back it. That's really what that's become, just a new data source for VCs before they invest.
Right. Yeah. And what they're trying to do is say pre-crowdfunding anything is something you need to either file a Section D exemption with us, or you need to do a proper to qualified investors only raise, and it doesn't work for stuff that regular people want, like the real people want and need.
And they're trying to change the qualified investor or accredited investor from 2 million to 20 million, I think it is. So that too many people made money in the crypto world that are all accredited investors now. So
right, hyperinflation too, right? Like, God forbid, pretty soon people.
Things that you can actually apply intelligence to be able to profit from. We can't have any of that, but you can go blow your entire paycheck on scratch-off tickets if you want. That's totally fine, because you can't really win with that. I mean, occasionally somebody does, we take a lot of money. Actually, it's a benefit for us. But if you really want to apply a skill, and use your noggin and work for something. No, you can't do any of that. Yeah. That's what from where I'm standing, that's what the rules
counter narrative that gets spun with it, right? Where they convince people with the stories that they talk about the winners with, that they don't really want that much money, that it tends to destroy lives to be rich.
Yeah.
Bullshit. Yeah. I'm sorry, but everybody knows that if they had millions of dollars, their lives would be easier and they could do more with them. Hiding that and hoarding it just because you think the world is zero sum and you don't want to try as hard to compete. That's what we're up against here ultimately.
Yep. Land of the free and home of the brave.
So, what did you guys think about the censorship news this week? The revelations about. Did you guys see this?
I saw something a little bit about it. I've been pretty distracted, but you're talking about the
Missouri
internal
and another state attorney general got some discovery in their case against the federal government for actively colluding with big tech to censor certain content, and they're finding that there was hardcore collusion, like unconstitutional Bantam v. Sullivan type stuff.
Yeah, that's a little bit that I did read, and I've still got some catching up on that to do. But like they had regular meetings, and there's email chains, and it was just like business of the business of the day kind of feel.
Oh, yeah,
and now I guess they're getting more discovery based on that. I think.
Well, the part though that they won't release is the fact that it's all one actual entity. So it's like oh they're colluding. It's like, well, they're not really.
Yeah, well, this is the emails that I read, and there was only like maybe one or two email threads that I read. It was really like it was a personal email to somebody in a different department of the same company. It's just working in big companies before. It wasn't. It didn't feel like an external email to me.
My name's Grant.
So,
well, the one that I thought was really funny was there's this woman who. Was honored as or honored by the Brandon in chief for being like the greatest marketer of all time or something like that. She apparently was in on the censorship stuff and had received an email that was highlighted in these releases, and the email was something like, hey, this parody Dr. Fauci account is not one of ours. Can we do something about this? Can we get it taken down? Emailing, Instagram or somebody, and they got back to her immediately, and they're like, "Yeah, sure, we can look into that, no problem." Right. So when I went to her page on Twitter to see what was up, at the very top of her post was like a price list to buy access to her.
What?
Yeah, no kidding. And I retweeted, and like moments later, she had taken her Twitter account private. I saved the screenshots.
Nice.
Yeah, there's some dirty shit going on, but at least it's coming out. So I think that's a good thing.
That's the surprising thing, frankly, that we're seeing it.
There are tons of payouts from Facebook to Ireland to on all these lawsuits, data tracking settlements. There's one for 90 million, one for 38 million for tracking users' location. Then there's the 400 million for breaking data protection laws in Ireland. Like it's kind of breaking open. Like the truth is coming out. I mean, I guess it's stuff we've kind of always known, but maybe they are being held accountable for it.
It kind of depends on what happens. Like what are they, who's going to do what about any of this crap? Because when you see some of the stuff that's already been exposed, no consequences, you have to wonder.
I'm with Joe. I'm just done. I don't think anything's gonna ever change or get fixed without.
I go back to the
watershed event, without a nexus point, without violence, really, without something big.
It's unfortunate, but it seems that way.
I don't. It's when you look at Hunter, and just being as old as I am, and seeing how like this is something from a movie. This is unimaginable. Like it's not.
Yeah.
The average person couldn't come up with it. It has to be something that like a creative.
But that Durham lawsuit's coming out.
Would have come up with
court date
20 years ago. Gary Hart was running for president, and the only thing that happened was one weekend there was a picture of him on a boat with a girl.
On his lap.
That was it.
Yeah.
No, nothing salacious. Just hey, this chick's not your wife. What are you doing on Saturday on a boat? I'm out of the race.
One of the problems, and you're right. People have been like desensitized. Like we're in the boil, and things are so hot that's just normal, I guess now. But there's so much bullshit floating around that people if it's convenient to do so, especially, they'll just dismiss things out of hand, like, oh, that's probably some fake shit.
Well,
Like,
can I tell you?
I'm talking about
people. That's my point, though, Dave. When you have a video of Hunter weighing his crack and talking, not just talking about it, you know, and then you have Joe Biden right after they go to him on the floor. If you're caught with this much crack, you're going to go to prison. We don't care if you're the judge and you say they don't want it.
We're going to take your assets from you. You're going to forfeit your life, your family.
That's the Hunter, and he's like, you know, hey, this isn't full half ounces of crack, man. I want more crack. This is not enough. I mean, it's where do you go?
And
you know,
the people that I talked to, and I want to say this:
to
go away for the weekend.
I want to say this because I think I'm in one of among us. I'm probably in a unique position to have this. Like I'm pretty close with a lot of people on the left, so I talk to them a lot. And I've brought this up about Hunter Biden's laptop, and I've gotten two responses. One of them was, "Well, I don't even know if that's real." Still today, people are like, it's probably not. It's probably like another one of those. Now the left is using the fake news excuse, which is interesting to me, you know. And the other one is, well, why does that matter? It's not the president. It's his son. He's not in office. So why is it a problem for Biden? You know, which obviously there's like logical fallacies around that. People ignoring the fact that compromises the fucking president at a minimum. And then that's not even to go into like, okay, if you're not even going to look at it because you don't even know, you don't know if it's real or not. So you're not going to bother with it. You're not going to ever get to the part where dude's taking 10% happily and he's selling access to a dad and stuff like that. Right. So the people that this would affect, that would change their opinions, are not listening, right? That's one of the major problems, is like everybody who is already of an opinion that's not helpful to the administration, they're happy to go look at it, but you're not changing anyone's opinion there.
I think it
people
is,
that it matters.
I think it is changing the people in the middle, waking up more people. There's always going to be the extreme people, you know, always. But like I was at school on Tuesday, our co-op day, and some ladies that like literally wouldn't say shit if their mouth was full of it, sweetest things in the world, are like coming up to me going, oh my God, did you hear what the president said this weekend? And, you know, did you hear? And they're asking me about the economy. They're starting to look at things that they would have never even turned the TV on before or paid attention to. So things are people in the middle that just, you know, had their beer and football, bread and circus, you know, they are listening. They are looking at it.
That's good. That's good.
Oh, I mean, and on top of that too, like the real issue wasn't really ever what Hunter Biden specifically did, right? The real issue was the fact that before anybody had a chance to even evaluate it, it was silenced, and it was silenced at a time where news like that can change people's opinions, whether or not the country thinks it's important. They didn't get a chance to decide whether or not it was.
They were censoring direct messages on Twitter that pointed to that
that's
article.
Where
that's where I think we're breaking down. That's where I say no, it's a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, well, and
I think the only thing I think now when the news, what the news should say, it's not, oh, look at this. This is the end of Biden. Oh, look at this. This is Trump's going to go away for this. No more. It's not going to happen.
Yeah,
get people pissed off and say, hey, look at this. Hey, here's a news story about this one. A 15-year-old kid that got 30 years in prison because he had, you know, half an ounce of crack. Oh, by the way, Hunter Biden had 20 pounds of crack, whatever.
Right.
Just to show the disparity until people go and get pissed off enough to force change or to tear it all down and just rebuild it.
Well, it's not. In Europe,
I don't see anything happening.
Well, where I am is that I just wish people would like be consistent in their ideals, you know, like if whether you think that people should go to prison for crack or not, that's up to you. That's not the problem here. But applying things across the board, that's the issue. That's the you know, rules for thee but not for me sort of.
Well,
you know,
that's what I'm saying. I think that should be the story.
That's democracy.
That should be every story. Everything should just be, oh, look how it's for thee and not for me. That's it. That's the only thing till people get pissed off enough.
We can make the rules however we collectively want, but let's
media-
apply them across the board.
The only reason why the media was, good and honorable in the beginning, it was, because it was good and honorable. But I think recently it's because they were frightened of doing what they're doing, because they would have been besieged and crushed by the agencies that were watching them. Now, the agencies that were watching them are kind of in collusion with the few families that own all the media.
Well, that's what's more obvious now than it used to be.
If the media was scared
average person
of a mob tearing down their headquarters and their lives were at risk.
Right. But their job has always been to share. I don't think we would have the problem that we have. Right.
Yeah. Well, and it has
always been to point a camera and get people looking at either the red puppet or the blue puppet and cheering for one or the other. Right. Like that's always been their game. Like it's just harder to do on the internet until you start shouting misinformation.
Well, and that's the thing. That's the thing that in their divide and conquer strategy, having two sides of everything, they had an issue with the internet making access to information easy. And therefore they needed to pollute certain information pools. Right. And, we had people that had ties to, some 3-letter agencies that, on the commercial side, that came to us wanting to solve the fake news problem. And we were like, okay, what do you mean? We were actively building Den at the time, and we had a market-based, transparent solution to that very problem. Look, the information's out there, and people can help judge it and evaluate the source and the meaning. And that was not what they wouldn't be able to say, oh, that's fake news and that's fake news.
That doesn't let them put an Atlantic Council team of censors on your board and let you tell people what they can and can't see, because that is the only way that this shit holds up, right? But
the idea of
it breaks down, right? Before we run out of time on current events, I think we should turn to Europe a minute, because there's some crazy shit going on over there. Have you guys seen much about this?
Yes.
There are people who are in Germany who are literally going to coal mines and getting in line to see if they can get some coal to heat their fucking homes right now. And the winter is, winter is coming, right? Like to quote the famous Targaryens. But,
and there are no trees generally in Germany,
Starks,
except maybe the Black Forest, which is that going to disappear? Because they're going to have some people.
You definitely don't go around cutting trees down.
To keep warm. And this is supposed to be some kind of good thing for the environment, or like a good thing for so-called preventing misinformation from Russia. Like this is nonsense. And I think people see it.
Very interesting about
that. They see it when they're freezing.
I thought something really interesting about that is Zelensky came out and said that they have 15 nuclear reactors there in their small country. They have 15. He said we have way more electricity and power than we could need. We could supply Europe with all the cheap electricity they need, no problem.
Liz ordered fracking last night or this morning.
But I thought that was, and now he's saying that Russia is using the nuclear power plants as a weapon.
Drilling.
So he said that they are using nuclear weapons now.
Here's that
against them, because they've weaponized some of these plants. But I just thought it was interesting that they had so many nuclear power plants, enough for all of Europe, which Lisa says that they're not nuclear power plants. It's cover.
But two things that are hopeful about the bad, but hopeful is that cold and hunger will typically bring out courage. So
hopefully, but hopefully we can avoid it. Like we can avoid having this devolve into a thing where it's just like cannibalism happens because people run out of food. Like
how terrible is it?
Will start happening.
Nothing's changed. Nothing's fucking changed since 1400s or what. We're the same people. Literally, that comment what you just said, Joe. Well, cold and hunger does. Come on. I couldn't imagine that being said. I couldn't imagine 20 years ago.
Yeah,
I couldn't ever imagine
Europe's going to starve. Europe's
saying that. Cold and hunger will make people. And
what surprises me is they're like, I don't know if it's cognitive dissonance or what it is, but like you obviously took away a huge source of power when you shut down nuclear power plants. And you obviously took away a huge source of food when you started outlawing like industrialized farming fertilizers and stuff like that. Yep. And then everyone's looking around like, oh my God, what happened? Why don't we have enough power? Why don't we have enough food? And it's like, dude, we fucking did it to ourselves.
Well, pay attention. If people fucking paid attention instead of watching the goddamn celebrities, it'd be a different world, right? It's fucking all the new gods that we have. It's like, oh, did you see what I was like? Fuck Hollywood.
I don't even know
how big Kim Kardashian's
they don't notice or see it. I think it's that they're afraid.
Well, that is
people
kind
are
of
afraid
important.
to stand up for it. I really do. I hope that we can develop the courage to look and see, because I think
I'm not gonna lie. I'm just
kind
of
said is the same thing that happened to Lisa. She literally just said, all these women are coming up to her like, hey, did you know that this happened? Yeah. I knew it was going to happen a year ago, and then I told a bunch of people it's going to happen. And then
they said you're crazy, and then it actually happened.
Yeah.
Well, here's how I decided that I'm going to cope with it, which is I'm just going to take an interest in watching to see how it unfolds. I'll help out where I can. I'll build Den and talk to people about it and onboard people to different options if they want it. But overall, at some point, I just got to be like, well, this is going to be interesting, I guess. We'll see how this goes down. I didn't know I was going to live through this part of human history, but here we go.
Yeah.
Right. I think
Dave and me are in a place, and Lisa, where it's so different. Like the only person here that really has a different perspective is Joe, and he literally moved because of it. You know what I mean? The U.S. isn't really. My mind got blown the other day. We talk about Russia. Do you know that we could walk as United States citizens? We could walk to Russia.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that. Nobody knows that. I think 99% of the United States doesn't know that.
Hold on, I gotta look at a map. What are you talking about?
For certain months of the year, the sea freezes, and you could either
the small island on the side of Alaska. It's like Jimbo Island. There's Big Jimbo Island, Small Jimbo Island. They're only 2 miles apart.
Okay, gotcha.
Right, and one is attached to Russia, and the other one's attached to Alaska. Mm-hmm. And in the winter, this little 2 miles of water between them freezes, and people have walked just across this little 2 mile ice bridge to Russia.
I see it. Yeah,
we're literally that close to Russia, but we don't think of them that way.
Is that how the first Americans got here?
Yeah, it is actually. Well, I mean, maybe in a land
bridge. Not that islands, but yeah.
There's a town on the island. So I mean, there's a literal, and there's no towns in Alaska. It's like so sparse populated. And this small island, there is a town on it where people live, and you can walk over to Russia.
Nice.
Yeah, I wonder if they've set up a border control station on that.
Well, speaking of Seattle, the thing that surprised me most, there have been occasions where the jingoist yellow journalists would create an enemy. North Korea is evil. They hacked Hollywood. The North Koreans attacked Hollywood because they were pissed about that movie. Right? Total bullshit.
Right.
I never saw. I mean, how do I say this? In Seattle, right now, I mean, I've been there for a bit, right? But it blew my mind how many little businesses and medical clinics, things like this, would be flying Ukrainian flags. And I'm like, what?
Virtue signals are cheap, man.
About yes, it is. I mean, I guess they were doing same thing with Black Lives Matter. Same thing
that's ultimately the problem.
You can buy a flag at Walmart. Right? It's whatever.
Virtue signals suck.
But your American flag threatens them, makes them feel unsafe. Right. So you have to take that down.
Virtue signals
Ukrainian flags made in China.
Virtue signals suck, especially because they're cheap and easy, right?
Yeah.
Because virtue, if you look back at the very first discussions about it, if you looked at Aristotle and you talk about virtue, virtue was a hard-won thing. It was a thing that you had to work at, commit to, and actually sacrifice to achieve. And now you can pretend instead. And you can do that by getting that little blue and yellow flag emoji on your Twitter profile, right? Like that is not virtue. That is a virtue signal. And then there's counter virtue signals too.
Some of my friends on the left actually asked me not too long ago, like, why is it that people on the right are the only ones that fly American flags all the time? And you know what I said to them? I was like, great question. Take it back. Go fly one. If you don't want it to just be one-sided, go take it back and fly yours too. And now everybody flies it, and it's not weird anymore. You can do something about
that. Conservative, it's like, come on. But I still think at the core here, there's like an element of pessimism that we can't grab onto, You know, we can't really let ourselves do. If we fall into sort of a politics of despair, then we're going to end up sort of acceding to the notion that everything has to get worse, when in reality we have tools and we have the ability to build with tools that can make the world better. And that's, I think, a good segue into
so maybe positive anger, maybe. Yes,
righteous.
I think we have too many tools. I was talking about this like 10 years ago when there's one tinfoil hat thing I wanted to go over for current events that I think is pretty cool.
Real quick, tinfoil hat thing, and then
well, the thing about the virtue signaling, I want to kind of piggyback on what Greg said. Like 10 years ago, I was saying that you're not doing anything. Before, if people got pissed, they would do something, you know. And now they just put, do something with their profile picture. Before, you would write a letter to, the TV company, and I've said this to Lisa that because of Netflix, when Netflix had that kiddie porn show, I was incensed, and I was like, dude. My parents, they would have canceled their Netflix subscription the minute it was out. And I was like, I can't keep my Netflix, even though I like Netflix. So I didn't cancel it, but I took it off the auto rebill. I'm like, I'm canceling my Netflix, but it's already paid. So, I'm going to keep it. And they dropped the show like during that month. But it was weak-handed to me to do that. But it took me 2 months to do that, or a month to do it, until Texas, of course, came out and said, hey, that's child porn. We'll arrest any Netflix officials that keep this up.
Did they do that?
Yeah, and then they took it. They stopped it in the United States. So
do you think enough people canceled that it hurt? They were like, oh, maybe not. We shouldn't do this, or what?
No, that's I think what people need to start doing. They need to if you're pissed, don't tweet about it. Don't put a meme out or do that.
Or if you do tweet about it,
use your money.
Screenshot of you canceling the thing. Like
do that. That's something like that.
With your dollar.
Use your money.
Advocating for cancel culture.
Use your money. Hit those companies where
cancel culture should be,
and let them know. I paid an extra 20%.
Battle of
screw
Athens.
You out of my money.
Battle of Athens in Tennessee in 1946. Do you remember that? That they had and I think it is a lot of it is what you're used to. They had guys. I was
only in third grade back then.
Okay, they just came back from the war. They saw the corruption in their little town, and what did they do? They took up arms. They ended that corruption right there locally. It's a known thing. It's in Tennessee.
Did you see the guy in Texas with his chainsaw fighting off Antifa from his store?
Oh.
He's like, do not bring that crap in here. And he chases them like down the street.
Wow.
With a chainsaw.
So did you see in the Metropolitan? This is the tinfoil hat thing. First off, Lisa, did you talk about the Pope last month or last show?
Yeah, briefly. Yeah.
Okay, basically, so that's a
announcing the beginning of World War III.
Well, no. The Pope said that all Vatican assets, liquid assets, are to be brought in by the 21st of September.
29.
They're just worried about it getting seized.
My son's traveling up to Washington in 21st September. I'm kind of worried about that now. I didn't think about that.
Queen Elizabeth is under medical supervision.
Go to the questions, which we really should.
But anyway, so now I'm watching all news stories, and that's in the back of my head. So the Metropolitan Museum, the Attorney General, they raided it. Anyway, they got 100 and something of these artifacts, and 90% of them are going back to Italy. So I'm thinking, Italy, that's an interesting place. Isn't the Vatican right there? And then I looked some of the stuff, and some of the stuff are just straight Catholic relics. There's books that nuns wrote and other things. So I'm sure it's just an odd timing.
It was like Dark Age preparation, basically. But the cool thing about what we were talking about before, with the Netflix deal, that is an example of we didn't need government to point guns to make it stop. We used market power, right? Everybody just shifted their money away from them, and they listened. Ultimately, that was going to be a thing, and they're taking down all even more of their ideologically aligned content because of their seriously read bottom line, right?
I actually think it was government. I think,
and
that's the reason that you don't think so makes me even more sure that it was. Because Texas,
if it was,
the governor of Texas said we will arrest.
I'm opposed to censorship.
We will arrest anyone working for Netflix in the United States, especially if they come to Texas. But we've classified this as pedophile. It was
Well, I mean, I watched
It's not like straight unicorn, but it was like some kind of law under that. And they did that literally like days later. They took it out of the United States. So I do think that government did that, and the fact that wasn't widely reported, except in Texas, I think that's kind of makes me more sure of it, that they didn't want people to know about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather see market power decide.
I would too, absolutely.
There is no real market power. There's no free market. It's all controlled.
Oh, come on.
That's the problem.
That's
there's a real free market, even in crypto. There is no such thing as a free market.
I think people have a right to buy what they will and not buy what they will. And
yes, they do. Power. But the problem is that doesn't exist. You can't buy certain cryptos right now because the government doesn't want you to. And if you hold them, the power between the powers that be and the Asians or people with exchanges that are doing corrupt things, it's not a free market. It's all the regulatory side.
That the market is laissez-faire. Perfect. I'm just trying to say that there are elements of it where we can influence the way
I think it's radically.
You know what? I want to say something really bad. I want to say something very trolly. This is going to be bad. Donald Trump did one of the most socialist, communist things ever in the past 20 years.
What's up?
Which one?
No, we'll say this thing. Everyone's going to hate this, but you can't argue with it. When the airlines and everything, fell at the beginning of the
cruise lines and shit,
completely used government to
luxury businesses.
Completely used the government and money, printed money up, and the government fixed all of these corporations. They're businesses and companies funded by the government, 100%.
Well, I mean, but if you consider the airlines fixed, then you haven't been on.
But that's the very definition of communism. It's
right.
It's the government running all this stuff, and that's exactly what it did. The market wasn't allowed to just work itself.
Right.
Asshole airline companies weren't allowed to fall. Great airlines that were took care of their customers and had great service weren't allowed to buy up all their airplanes, for pennies on the dollar.
Same thing happened to automotive.
You're not allowed to change the way airports load onto planes, so you can't fix the problem with how long it takes to board, right? Like there's a whole bunch of shit that happens because the government interferes with industry.
Yeah, but they sold it, and people were so stupid. They were like, we can't let the airlines fall and fail. And everyone's like, no, we can't. Like if it happened, if the profits got to here or whatever, that they would all disappear and blow up. And it's like, no. They're just those airplanes are still there. Everything's there.
I think they just need to let jetliners be classified as private jets.
Again,
had no problems. They could have
Americans say they want liberty, but every instance that you look at the automotive industry, same thing happened. They were all going to collapse. It's like, oh, we have to save them. We have to save them. Right. It's crazy.
Congratulations. Enjoy your Chevy Bolt, right? Like, okay. Anyway,
until you have to buy a battery for it.
Right. Yeah. But we can't call Tesla an American car company either because they don't they don't let the union bosses take a cut. In any case, we should totally go to the questions though, because we can fix a lot of
how do we fix all this shit
if we look forward?
Yeah.
So
that's actually a pretty good segue as we got done just ripping apart how the system's just not freaking working for people. It's like, all right, well, how do we apply blockchain to that and fix everything we can think of?
All right.
Somebody else have to think of the
First question today, we have Rambo 3. The world blockchain is currently in a channel. Bitcoin drops below 19K. It is the right time for holders to earn more money and get rich at the next bull that will be. Is this a question?
Oh, I think that's Joe's least favorite question. Number go up.
Well, it's a statement. It's an opinion.
Yeah.
Any comments?
I'm missing a question here.
I would just say cool story, bro.
I'll answer this. Yes, because it's a blockchain. There you go.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know if it's a good time for you to sell the Bitcoin after it's been performing pretty badly.
Well, and ETH is actually outperforming it pretty dramatically right now.
Well, I don't know what the question is, but like just in general, the idea if you're playing that game is to buy something that you think is going to go up later when it's low, I guess, Well,
like, and if anything, buy something that you might use, or that's the primary. If you can buy something that you would actually use,
I don't want to dismiss out of hand. I can rephrase it in that context. This is what I do: is I look at stuff that I'm going to use, Because if I'm going to use it, other people are probably going to use it too. Yeah. You know, if I have a reason to use that, this is why I run an Oxen node and I have some Oxen tokens, is because one, I can use it, right, to do things like communicate on the session app under the handle that I like, so that people know it's me because it's registered with ONS. And I can also use it to validate people's network communications anonymously to make sure that the network is stronger and things are working like they should. And if I'm going to do that, I can assume, okay, maybe other people are going to do that. So if you want to bring speculation into this show, which we rarely do, I would say that's my strategy. And I'm not rich, but it's worked well enough to keep me in the game.
For my part, I would respond to this by saying crypto is created to set you free, not make you rich. And that 19K that you mentioned is an assumption that we've built into all of the way we think about value that we need to eradicate from our minds. 19K in what? U.S. inflationary magic money? Like, what does that even mean? If you go back 10 years, you've lost more than 40% of the purchasing power. If you go back 20 years, you've lost more than 50.
And why 20K too, right? Why 20K, right? Because that was a previous collapse point, in the markets. But was it really? Because like back then, money was worth a different amount. So really, shouldn't it be like 25K or something? Or
real equivalency to be drawn in terms of actual purchasing power between Bitcoin and Dogecoin. Honestly, we could look at that pair and probably get a better accurate prediction of its movement relative to purchasing power. Because
that's why I'm looking forward to Bitcoin. And Bitcoin would be the worth the most when it's worth $0.
Yes.
Exactly. Or when people stop thinking about the dollar sign as meaning anything other than
how much normies don't say how much is a dollar worth. It's worth $1. It's
$1. Right, exactly. Yeah.
And when people stop looking at Bitcoin, as how much dollars is it worth? It's a big.
That's related to what I was just going to say, which is that I tend to measure things.
And by the way,
Bitcoin into the dollar for that reason.
For the maximalist monks out there, I mean, this is, in my opinion, the sickness that has been inherited or brought on by trying to tie it to Wall Street, trying to make it more like the traditional markets, trying to fit it in, thinking that's going to drive the number up. When really, if you look at it, how much money has been printed, dollars have been printed. The fact that Bitcoin is actually worth less at any time in the past 5 years than it was in the prior year is nuts, because the inflation of the dollar, and it's totally out of whack, and it's because of those.
Well, it's never priced in because people assume inflation.
And I tell you that it's not a free market. That's totally a suppressed price.
That's the monthly. If you want to watch it move the most it ever moves, then wait for the monthly futures call dates. Like that's when crypto moves, and that moves.
Not to get too political,
long and shorting it
again, because we just got off of that kick for the current events thing. But it's one of the things that always piss me off when I'm trying to talk to somebody about things that we disagree with, but I want to have like a logical conversation about. Is I'll get things like, well, free market capitalism obviously isn't working, and I'm just like, but no, it's not, because it doesn't exist. That's the point that Joe was just mentioning, was that people think that what's failing is failing because of the free market system failing or the capitalism system failing. But we don't have that anymore, and maybe that's why it's failing. Maybe that could be
that frustrates me too, talking to especially younger people. And then you say that's not capitalism, it's crony capitalism. It's very, very different. It's like you telling me that, that communism won't work. Oh, that socialism won't work. This will work. It's literally, it's like, sure, it's utopian to have a socialist society, a communist society, or socialist in a commune, like 20 people living together on a farm.
You can't expect me, logically, you can't.
Yeah. And I want to ride a unicorn down the road. That would be super fucking sweet, but that's not reality.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you can't expect me to accept your premise that the reason communism hasn't worked in the past is because it wasn't done right, without accepting my premise that the reason that capitalism and free market isn't working today is because we don't have that model anymore. It's been taken over.
I mean, we never actually really tried laissez-faire for very long.
Well, I will tell you, probably the closest and most recent example of what would approach laissez-faire capitalism was the 2017 ICO craze.
Yeah,
that
was pretty close to it.
Basically allowing anyone in the world to put value into a project and see what happened.
Yep, and you could lose all your money or you could get rich.
Yep.
Whether they were gambling or whether they trusted someone who said, "Oh, hey, you do this," like it's kind of on you and go for it if you want, but be careful.
Yeah. And it made some great things. Like we still have like nobody ever talks about it, but the DAI stable coin, it just hangs out by its peg, man, and does its thing. And it's there, and it's the one that I choose when I have a choice. Because it's not hooked. I mean, there are some things about it that are hooked to dollars because it does have USDC and USDT in its basket, but but it doesn't have to be like that. So
you don't have to peg.
I take issue with stable coins because they try to anchor value to $1 against volatility when they probably shouldn't be trying to.
Yeah, I would rather peg something to the Big Mac than the dollar, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a neat idea. Someone should do a stable coin that's indexed to how many Big Macs it'll get you. That'd be fantastic. In any case, so. I think that's sort of the right answer to that question is like we're not going to talk about that too much because it's not the right place for it, but also it's kind of a distraction. And maybe if that's the way that you think about crypto, you should look beyond that because it's going to need to be more than that soon. The US dollar, when you convert out of that 19K, isn't going to be the same US dollar that you sold to get it because so much inflation.
That person in like 12 times the votes of the next question, though. That's what it's a big thing people think about. But I think in what today's topic is, it's really putting money on the blockchain. That's a way it will improve everything.
Okay. Well, shall we move on to Jacob Wayne's question?
Yeah.
All right. So his question today is, what is the best way to help normies understand that blockchain technologies will indeed improve their quality of life in every aspect of their own world? It's a great question. Anybody want to start off with this one? Lisa, you didn't say much about
I was going to say, I do a lot of this. We travel around and do meetups and hold classes, Crypto 101 classes. And so I do a lot of talking to normies about the value of Bitcoin or crypto blockchain. And I think, they get excited about the number go up thing. That does bring them in. But really, when you do talk about the use case, the truth protocol and the history, when you get somebody, I guess you have to find out what's important to them. And so a lot of the people that we bump into are patriots. And when you talk about history, and we've done whole shows on blockchain and history and the value that it has there. And so I think that kind of thing, and empowering people with what we just went through with our count not being accurately validated. I hope I'm not using the wrong words. Get us in trouble on the who tubes. But things like that, those kind of use cases where you really could have a voice. The fallopian tubes, no. Those kind of use cases where you really could empower the people to have more of a voice for themselves. I think those
right on.
Because right now I think people feel really hopeless, and that's part of the reason that they do tune out and don't care and don't try. It's the kind of why bother?
Of fear, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
To piggyback on what she just said, we all feel so terrible about where the world is, but we all know the massive things that could fix it. And when the question about the normies, they don't know that shit can be fixed.
Right.
So do you imagine how depressing it would be? I would want to bury my head in the sand if I didn't know.
Well, like when Joe started telling me about the protocols, about the identity, and I think you talked about like a key signing party thing and how people's identity could be validated. And then how now there's programs or protocols that it doesn't, I could validate that it's Dave because part of his profile was that he took a picture and he had, you can explain it better than me, but it was something about the brown hair. And then he saw 3 people. So it was a decentralized way of identifying and having the truth.
Yeah.
Or it's like also, I remember steroids kind of thing. It's kind of like a
when we first started talking about that years ago, it was like, hey man, I want to look at porn, and it has to verify you're 21 years old. So before, porn sites probably not the most reputable, no offense, but you'd have to give them all of your information to verify you're 21 years old. Whereas if it's a decentralized system, you can log in, they can connect to that. We just need to know he's 21.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Just do a true false check on the identity.
Yeah. Don't need to know where he lives. Don't need to know, what his income is. Don't need to know his address. Don't need to know his phone number.
Just don't even need to know his actual age. Just that it's over 21.
Or his race. None of that. So what's his driver's license number? No. Last 4 of your social. Just is he 21? That's it. When it comes to normies, I think when you're able to, the 2 biggest things that I think normies would care about is like voting systems, is supply chain, and just the fact that blockchain doesn't stop corruption and stealing and bad actors, but it makes it very hard to impossible to hide.
Yep. It does stop certain kinds of corruption. It stops the kind of corruption where the person who has access to the keeping of the books commits it.
Or it at least makes it more difficult. It makes it more difficult to cheat or to lie.
You can't erase and replace as a way to cheat anymore.
And after whatever event happens that causes us to tear the whole thing down and restart it, it's my hope and belief that it will be used properly to provide transparency for the citizenry, because that's the one thing that is the biggest key.
Dude, the legislative process should run on it, man.
Because we should know all of that stuff. And, there have been, some attempts to map who's getting what campaign contributions and what they vote for. And those are great. But literally it should be, if you want to serve and you want that taxpayer money, you're going to be monitored. You're going to deal. You're going to basically live through what we've been living through for the past 40 years, which is everything is monitored, right? That's going to be you, and everybody's going to know, who you're sleeping with and who you're going to lunch with, and what conversation you're having at lunch. And you say, "Oh, holy crap! The senator mentioned something about a campaign contribution while he's voting for something this lobbyist wants. Right. That's odd,
Right. We should pin them to surveillance. They should never be free of it. No. As soon as you're in a position of public trust, you should be in a position of public distrust, essentially.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that's really going to be amazing is when we can get the Treasury to run on a public blockchain transparently. Imagine being able to see where your tax money goes, literally.
And now they're going to start looking for any key combinations to take us down, because
that's the thing. When they are pushing these CBDCs, will they also run on a CBDC, and will that be visible to us?
Seems fair, right?
Seems like it's fair.
Yeah.
It'll go into the same black box.
I think if I could go off on something real quick, something that I haven't completely figured out how to convey to people that don't already understand it, which is a big problem, is this idea that there are like experts or people on the radio who call themselves experts will talk about how things like proof of work and Bitcoin are bad for the environment and convince people to, lash out at anybody who disagrees with that and stuff. And if you're going to lash out at something, and if you're going to go out and say, yeah, this is bad because somebody told me so, like, you can at least do some, some reading up on the topic that you're against. I find that a lot of people just don't understand the stuff that they want to stifle, the innovation they want to stifle. And the example I'll give is, Bitcoin mining bad, the end. I was reading what the White House put out or whatever it was recently, and there was a pitch basically for forcing industry to convert over to proof of stake. And, if they can't do it by themselves, maybe we should pass laws to outlaw proof of work and stuff like that. And there was nothing in the document talking about the fact that we have so much, like there are applications for capturing otherwise wasted energy that we have today. You could very easily, like if you go to a municipality and you say, hey, I know your infrastructure is, needs some upgrades and you don't really have that much money for it. Here's an idea. Plug in a variable hash rate machine that only uses waste energy that you can't store anyway, and capture that wasted energy in a token that can be used to maybe reinvest in your local infrastructure, make it more efficient, make it more green, to reduce the carbon footprint of your city. Because really, like, there's just a lack of thinking going on around.
How about a space heater for all those people in Europe that's also a miner? Like that to me sounds like a pretty good idea.
Anything that's using, if you really like stretch that out, anything that's using power that just to create heat or to or too much that you can't store because battery storage is limited, like in every application of energy waste today, can't we at least apply it to that? If you're going to make regulations about it, can we at least say, hey, solve that problem first where it's appropriate, or something along those lines?
I just want to toss it, Joe, real quick. I just want to toss in a plea for everybody to remember that every time they call for regulation, they're calling for men with guns to enforce it. So
yeah,
obviously
that's the way it works. I have a friend.
People with guns.
I have a friend that's very interested in the flare gas example stuff, that they're building stuff down in Texas to do, very cool stuff. Now, here's the thing, though. That entire narrative is a distraction. It's my contention that they want to be able to alter history. And with that power and the ability to say, well, we really can't compete against it unless we want to put trillions in, or expose the fact that we actually have the hidden backdoor secret to those cryptographic curves that will totally kill Bitcoin. That all of that, or whatever they're doing with the decentralized hash power, I've seen a lot of very interesting theories that, like SETI, this is a really brilliant way to get people to do these things with this algorithm that they can use for other purposes. But either way, the proof of work, the most interesting thing about it, and I like variety for Dragon Chain, that we want proof of stake, we want proof of work, we want multiple algorithms for proof of work, and other proofs not yet developed.
Diversity of security actually is greater security.
Exactly. And that's why Dragon Chain's level 5. That's what it is. Absolutely. And the funny thing is that proof of work is a really hard nut to crack, and it's measurable. You can literally put a number on how much it would cost. So,
Joe, I'd like to share a quick analogy for people who don't understand the diversity of security thing.
Yeah.
If there's a computer virus that attacks only Windows machines, and you've got an office that just has Windows machines, and you get that virus in there, you're hosed. But if you run Macs and Linux and Windows, 2/3 of your workers are going to be able to keep doing their jobs.
It's the same reason that most agricultural issues that have led to famine were because there was not enough diversity.
Right.
It's like certain type of wheat that gets attacked by some unexpected pest, or if it's potatoes in Ireland that they all succumbed to the same disease, and it's the same thing with
or all your eggs in one basket.
Yep.
Yeah.
To go even further back. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually really the great analogy. Cool. So have we covered everything we can cover with this question? Should we move to the next one? All right. So Darox asks, do you have any ideas how blockchain can be used in local communities such as a village or neighborhood? I mean, Den.social Governance in particular. For which projects could this system be implemented first, and how to convince the local community that it's useful? So first off, I will have to say real quick, this is powered by Den.social, but the way we need to probably think about it is more broad. So let's just say DAOs. But the core of the question is still completely fair to ask in exactly the same way. So if you hear us say DAO, just think Den.social Governance, and you're thinking about the same kind of thing. Who wants to tee off on this one? This is a great question.
I'll talk. I think it's the reason I would differentiate between Den.social and DAO is because most DAOs are effectively investing clubs, right? They're we're going to put some money in and we're going to buy some of this and we're going to make money, right? Whereas Den is more it's because it's scalable and because you can let normies use it. You could set it up in your neighborhood just to help make decisions. He's like, hey, we're going to take the money that we put into the neighborhood organization to mow the lawn, and we're going to decide to change the guy that mows the lawn because this guy's rude or he's a mess or something else. It makes it very clean, and the way that they could see it is if you can. At Disney, it was a weird thing where anytime somebody said, "Oh, we don't need blockchain. This is a people problem. This isn't a technical problem," and it was always the same thing. It became very clear to me that it's a behavior thing. This is what you can use to fix people's problems. So,
one way I would go about convincing people that they need it is by talking to the folks who do the most but get the least acknowledgement for it. Because one of the cool things about these types of systems is that they reward the people who give the most, and they do it programmatically. So there's no judgment call on who gives the most being made by somebody who wants to elevate a political ally or make a point by highlighting somebody. No, the people that give the most get the most back, and you can see right there on the surface of it who's giving the most.
Because in most normal systems, the people that actually tend to contribute the most after a period of time will say, screw that. I've been doing this for years and I'm getting nothing out of it and it's not worth it. Whereas with this, it's I guess what you would call a trustworthy. I don't have to worry if the guy in charge hates me. He could hate me all he wants, but if I do these things, I'm going to get this reward. And that is extremely important to incentivize someone to get them to actually do something.
Absolutely. So, it also means that people can give spontaneous value, right? Like if you've got a good idea for the community and you just want to try it first and see how it plays and it's great, then you'll still get rewarded for it, right? Like it's a system that allows you to post hoc reward things too.
Yep.
And that means people can take the initiative and actually improve their communities without first having to seek permission to do so.
Yeah.
I think also it's important to talk about value capture. And usually I talk about this, or I think about this in the context of what I was talking about before, like waste energy, that kind of thing. But think of the waste energy that companies like Facebook figured out how to capture, right? People's idle time, people's interactions, their social interactions, the community building, the business management, the business interface with the public, all of these activities that were figured out, where Facebook, for example, figured out how to mine that value and capture it and suck it out of communities and keep it for themselves. Because that's kind of how it works if you boil it down. Now, it seems like, and this hasn't been proven at scale yet, all of this is so very new and still bubbling out of the primordial ooze that was the Satoshi white paper. But it seems like we have a genie that was let out of the bottle that you can use to recapture that value that's being mined out of your community, that's being taken out of your communities, and keep it local. You're able to capture that and run systems a different way that is more equitable and could very well lead to a reduction in income equality, for example, or something akin to a UBI, where really you're just getting rewarded for what you're already doing at idle anyway. And so you have more resources locally for your communities. Yep. So there's opportunity to really bring people together on things they care about. And that's what we're figuring out right now. That's what we're still sort of figuring out, and it's working, which I think is why we have a lot of negative attention lately.
Right. Well, there's also an element of transparency for the powerful too that comes with it, right? Like even at the town level, at the village level, at the local level, there are people who have a lot of quiet, soft capital that they gatekeep. They make sure that things can either come before a city council or a town council, or they're never heard, right? Mm-hmm. These types of things would have to be done in full public view if they were being recorded and tracked on a public chain.
Yeah.
And that too will help make sure that it's not just the people who have hoarded that power that get to keep control of it, that everybody gets a voice.
And by the way, even the little intricacies and to actually see how to convince them that it's useful is you pretty much just need to get started. Like most of these systems, you put it in place with the simplest possible model, and then you figure out how to fine tune it because you realize what people actually do. And that's what behaviors systems are about. But HODL signals bringing up, in a neighborhood homeowners association. And you even think about the little intricacies that the value that the homeowners association would have if they have someone who always pays their dues and always helps, contributes to whatever is needed in, the neighborhood park or whatever else, that they would build value, which would then be passed on to the new homeowner when they sell their house, which is more valuable to the homeowners association as well, more valuable to the home itself that they're selling, because they have some weight when they come into this neighborhood. It's a very interesting thing.
Well, and you could use homeowners association or taxes. As you guys were speaking, I was thinking of the example that we've had this conversation before, and Dave created this beautiful world somewhere in Gainesville. Yes. I imagine it where you can either pay taxes, or you can sweep the streets, or teach at your local school,
right?
Or contribute in whatever way, and it's all.
We have shows that are put on by a group called Visit Gainesville, for example, right? And maybe this is a bad example. Maybe they're free. Maybe they don't cost. I don't remember. But it seems like a good application for this tech, where we have something that is entertainment for the local community and to bring other people into the community, right? Why don't we make it cheaper or free if you've got a bunch of I cleaned the park credits for that month or something like that, some community contribution. I fed some people that were hungry, and I housed some people that needed it, and I cleaned up the springs, and I removed trash, and I have all of this on-chain data showing that I have contributed massively to the quality of life here in Gainesville. So why don't I just get in for free, and the out-of-towners can pay for a ticket? And that kind of system can exist now.
Oh yeah. Well, and if I were looking for a practical application too, now that you mentioned practical applications, start with your local recorder of deeds. Man, those people could be convinced very easily that this will save them time and pain and suffering. And it wouldn't take much to get a system like that in place. Like if you're going to push somewhere, pushing on the recorder of deeds would probably be
it can run totally in parallel as well. It's not, you don't even have to say, we're going to switch over entirely. No, you could still run the way you're doing it, put it in a freaking file box, everything else. The other thing that's interesting is things that would help a community. If the community wants jobs brought in, they could directly reward people for helping bring jobs in or creating jobs. Whereas right now, in order to do that, you pretty much have to know the right people and work through them. And a lot of times, probably illegally, say, hey, if you give me this, then I'll do this. Whereas if it were just transparent and anybody could do it, I don't know. It's more equitable either way. But
I think the number one thing to take away from all of these conversations before we jump to the next question is for sure, the best way to do it is to start trying. There's no right way with your community that we can tell you from here. And that's why local communities are local, right? More than we do what your town, your village, your city needs and what the people there want and what they think and talk about. But it's on you to try. So if you start trying to convince them, then you're gonna be taking the first step towards finding the right answer. And on top of trying, don't give up trying. If something doesn't work, try something new.
And I will say the big hurdle though is the maximalists and the all of the number go up BS, because that's the first thing you will get is no, we don't want that stuff here. We don't want child porn and the things that they claim crypto does. So
speaking of fake news, someone literally told me, and they believe this in their mind, they believe this somehow, that Bitcoin is evil because there's literally child porn embedded into the source code of Bitcoin. And I'm like,
lovely.
Like this is how you make life decisions. Like you just believe something and run with it.
Wow.
Anyway, that's all I'll say about that.
It's weird how there's like this Mandela effect when it comes to so many things. It really does blow my mind.
Okay, so Juicy J. Wait, let's go to the next question. Juicy J. I believe that the Den is a start for making the world a better place. How can general contractors and the network, how can general contractors and the network they're involved in using Den and blockchain to benefit their world circle? Network includes architects, subcontractors, interior designers, decorators, and clients. So we're talking about the contracting industry. This is a really great application for, for blockchain technology in general. And yes, any platform that's that's doing what Den is doing, for sure. So who wants to take this one first?
I think just the connection, man. Which was we didn't really hit on the other ones when it comes to like villages. Just the connection on a smaller level. If you're talking about like Den, where people are able to interact on a local level socially. But this is kind of the same thing. It's like more of a local level, or even like you're surrounding 3 or 5 towns when it comes to contractors. And like a buddy of mine is a roofer, and we had some trouble with my roof. The insurance company came out and they're like, almost needs it, but now we're going to pass. We're not going to pay for it. So he went and did some work on it. He's like, hey man, this is like $200 worth of shingles. It's like leftover. They're like the best shingles there is. But I'll just, I'm gonna leave here because I can't take it. So if contractors have surpluses of some stuff and other ones have, their shortages of other stuff, especially with like the lumber industry. Imagine if some contractor was smart and had like a buttload of wood that they bought when it was really cheap. And then he was able to like, sell some of this wood to other contractors who needed it really bad. I think it's a way just for
to use it as a marketplace,
almost to make like a micro marketplace.
Yeah. I love that idea. That's an awesome idea. And I think it would play well into, especially if you use these systems to just journal your work. As you're going about as a general contractor, you deal in the abstract with a lot of very small specifics, and the subcons that you select really are your competitive advantage, right? The people that you choose to work with, and your selective eye when it comes to that is what makes it so architects can decide that they can recommend you to their clients, for example. So if a project could be journaled all the way from beginning to end in a place where you could have trust in the truth of the source, I think there's immense power in that for architects all the way on down. And we might even be able to do things like going beyond that. Like, let's say we want to have a community pool, but we don't want to do it with public funds. We want to do it with a privately raised thing. Like, put a DAO together, do a community pool. Yep. And the other thing, I got to grind this axe when we're talking about architecture, because this is one that really hits home to me. I grew up in a house that was international style, Le Corbusier inspired, weird architecture. And most places wouldn't let you build that sort of thing because of homeowners associations. I think if people saw up close what the places were like and how amazing they can be for both, not just the people who live in them, but the construction process, because they tend to rely on local materials. That there would be a good chance to actually beautify and improve architecture, which would be a really fantastic thing.
I'll say we worked on a system, we didn't get to build it, but at Disney, that it was super interesting because they told us these stories that, they build a lot of buildings. They have these parks, they build constantly building, right? Basically a gigantic general contractor. And they had tons of problems where the plans that go forward, and because you have the structural engineers, you have the electrical engineers, you have all of the different groups that all have their job to do, that more often than not, they'll set up a room that's supposed to be a conference room or something, and they have everything run, and then it turns out that there's like a big column right in front of where the screen was supposed to be, and it's too late to go back now. It's going to cost them twice as much rebuild the whole thing. And so we had proposed essentially for the general contractor to let all of these plans get placed in, and then put behavior systems in front of the evaluation, the sign off, and the signaling that, hey, something's wrong here, right? I'm responsible for this, and what you're doing is going to break it, and it lets it happen in advance and ties everything all the way through the construction process to it. And it's all in chain, so it's single. You can make sure you have the right data, the most up-to-date data, all the rest of that.
It's amazing to me how often that kind of thing happens. I've had I don't know how many people, not a lot of people have had a hand in building a warship for the Department of Defense, right?
Yeah.
I feel like, oh, that's a unique experience I had. I lived in Bath, Maine.
That's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, and we built the USS Nitsa DDG-94. I lived on it for a little while we were finishing to build it up. And you would think, right, with the amount of expertise and money and time and like whatever you need, here it is, just build me an awesome warship. You would think that like, oh man, I got a brand new ship. Like this was my mentality going in, was like, oh yeah, I'm going to pick the new ship. I had a set of like 20 orders to pick from, but I'm like, yeah, I want to go to the new one because I don't want an old piece of shit that I got to be fixing all the time, right? Worst thing you can possibly do if you don't want to fix things all the time is to go to a brand new ship, because like most of the process after you commission a ship is figuring out what didn't get done right or at all, or got like mislabeled, or got like, there's just so much stuff and the documentation's not even there yet. So you got to go through systems that are like, oh, we forgot about documentation. We just did it. Somehow that made it through. And there's systems that exist that are undocumented or mislabeled. So you can't figure out what wire goes to where across, from one to the next. And systems just, I don't know, we're refueling one day at sea and the entire system just tells the ship, because we had this new automated, I probably shouldn't. Anyway, there was a problem. And the ship just decided to turn left.
Oh, weird.
Just by itself.
That's kind of a problem you don't run into with houses, right?
Like, it's sentient.
This is a
new houses have leaky roofs.
This is brand fucking new. So I feel like there's a place for accountability, and if not accountability, the signaling that Joe was talking about, where there's efficiency in communications, and it's independent of people not wanting to get embarrassed because they screwed something up and so they covered it up on paper.
Even the fact for process improvement, the fact, okay, we built this ship, we can actually analyze how this went wrong, so the next time we build one, because all that data is there. Right?
Well, and this raises an even more interesting question. Do we need general contractors at all if we build a decentralized smart contracting system? What's the point of a general contractor? To organize all of the little contracts?
It should be a DAO.
Why not do that as a decentralized system? Why not just have a smart contract created that seeks general contractors in a marketplace for?
Or why not have an Uber or a Lyft without the company?
Something that is missing is responsibility. I know if you read Vitruvius, his 10 books on architecture, back in ancient Greece and ancient Rome, if you were the architect of a building and it had an arch, you personally had to stand under the arch when they removed the scaffolding, because if it fell, you were dead. And they also had massive, if you ran over time, you would have massive penalties. I mean, it was harsh.
Isn't there a term that's like we use all the time that came from that? Like put your money where your mouth is. It was something from that. I remember.
But yeah.
Intentionally lying on your bidding process because you know that you can just change it later and they'll get an exception for you.
That's what I've been talking about the whole time. There has to be these massive consequences because that's all that bad people don't fear anything much. That's why they're already committing a crime. They don't have a fear. So I think there should be like massive penalty, like especially for corruption. I think if there should be like the death penalty.
What they do with
stop so much in Congress,
Nuremberg,
government in general. It's like, oh, if I take this bribe, I might be killed.
Yes.
You know what I thought was interesting about? So I went to Iceland not too long ago, and Iceland interestingly, is one of the few countries, maybe the only one, that after the 2008 banking collapse, they threw their bankers in jail. Like they put them in jail. They're like, you destroyed us. You're going to be punished for it.
They
Nobody
couldn't
else
do
really
that here though, because they'd have to throw the Fed and some of their liaisons of the Treasury in jail too.
And it's just such an interesting culture. And like Reykjavik had an anarchist for a mayor for a while, and just I don't know, the people just fascinate me there because of I guess just their historic location and you know how things have evolved around the world's kind of evolved around them, and they've kept up, but it's interesting there for sure.
Yeah, no, it's got that Viking spirit, man.
Yeah, all of the I'll tell you, every single what are they called? Icelander,
an Icelander, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, every single one, because there are actually quite a few in Bellevue area. That every single one I've known has been honorable, amazing, and genuine.
They're dope, dude. They're cool people.
I like them.
Yeah, from my experience, even to tourists, and we're annoying.
They were also one of the first groups to realize that the drowning pandemic was endemic, and there were some of the first people to come out and say, you know, okay, we're just going to have to put the life vests away because right, because we can't force people to do that forever. And they were one of the first countries to actually their public health chiefs were some of the first people to admit that this was beyond the types of solutions that the world was.
I think that's what I appreciated the most from that culture is the amount of I don't know if it's critical thinking or independent thinking or like, okay, well, we'll take that into account, but we are our own people and we'll do what we decide is best for us.
I think it's actually courage is probably the thing it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really kind of cool point to make, because courage is a lot of what this takes, right? Like if you're going to go implement any of these tools, you know, the implementation process is when they're the most vulnerable to corruption. Once you spin them up and they start running, they run how you spin them up. Yeah. So the one chance that the corrupt and the people who feed off of that graft have to make the system continue in a corrupt fashion is to manipulate the construction.
Or to slow it down long enough to catch up because they've been front run and they don't like that.
As the builder of it, as the progenitor of it, is what is going to matter the most. You better have resolve if you're going to come into this to do it right.
Evil has it really easy, and good in the world has to be ready to be to take drastic measures, or else it's just going to get trampled.
I think that's a really good point, Joe, because it goes back to what Greg was talking about, how what virtue used to mean, and people. It's a sad thing to say, but it's true. People need to be like ready to lay down their lives for their virtue, for their morals. I mean, can you imagine if the prison that was holding Assange just got hit by, 20, 30 just regular citizens with bats and clubs like every week?
Well, Sean, there was a Twitter Spaces on
courage to walk him out.
Exactly.
Or that's what I was going to say. There was a Twitter Spaces the other. Well, it's been a couple of weeks now, and they were talking about the J6ers, and I said, well, constitutionally, like you just go get the sheriff, and you walk in there and you say, we want them out, and they have to let them out, and you take them out.
When you're talking.
They're like, Lisa, that's ridiculous.
When you look at regular U.S. citizens being held in Cuba and at Guantanamo for it's like insane how far we have let this country.
I was talking to Lisa a week ago.
We still have people in there.
I had orders to get Gitmo. Remember that, Lisa? Yeah, it's an interesting place. I know quite a bit about that place. I never went, but I was basically on the plane. So I did a lot of research, and it ain't how it's supposed to be, man.
How many people who never even had charges announced are still there to this day?
Yeah, it's not allowed. But when and I have a lot of cop friends that really get pissed when I bring this up. It's against it's a war crime for every U.S. police officer.
Yeah, it tarnishes the whole.
It carries a taser. That's a war crime. It specifically says you can't use electricity to pacify or torture anyone. So to pacify someone, to pull them down, to use a taser, is a war crime.
That's why we didn't carry them in the military. We carried OC spray. We carried, and we had to get sprayed in the eyeballs with them to see how it hurt.
It's straight up a war crime for anyone to use a taser, and for anyone in government to use a taser. So every cop that carries a taser is literally guilty of war crimes, and that's a bad statement to say when your friends are cops. But it's like, hey man, read what it says, and it's mind blowing, man. But we let so much
the
go on.
Courage to object and refuse to carry it is the question.
We let so much go on because people are like, hey, I posted this, so
it was orders.
I'm fighting a good fight. I'm like, no, you actually have to literally fight. To fight. That's
about contractors.
I was just following orders is not an acceptable excuse.
Right. No, I was going to say, remember when Trudeau's security stepped down because he said, I took an oath to the Constitution and what he's asking me to do goes against my oath.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was impressed by Canadians.
But I want to know, and if they're out there, like, please say something in the comments because I want to know what you feel right now. But if you were one of those people on the horses that trampled those elderly people in the streets in Ottawa, how do you sleep at night? Honestly, like how the hell do you sleep at night?
With Canada, their military is so small, and I saw so many military going on YouTube and saying, I can't, I'm going to leave the military. About the ATF agent had like 6 months to retirement. He quit. He wrote this scathing letter about, I joined the ATF to make a difference and work to make the country safe. And all I'm doing is breaking my Constitution, my oath to the Constitution.
Yeah. Did you see the, I just saw it last week that there were cops. I don't remember what town it was, but there was some old lady with dementia forgot to pay for something, it was some small item from a store, and they had tape of them watching the footage after the fact, laughing about it, that they had basically tased this old lady, took her down, broke some stuff.
So
and
I have
they were
a
laughing
friend,
about it.
They were like, man, I kicked her hard. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
That's horrible. I have a friend who's a veteran, and she and her husband are both vets. They're actually the ones that have the nonprofit that we just did a fundraiser for. And she was telling me how, because of our broken systems, this is another back to blockchain, how blockchain will fix things. So she had been like stopped and didn't have her proof of insurance in a paper form. And in Oklahoma, that was a thing for a while. And she's like showing him on, and the cop was like, no, you're getting a ticket anyway. So she goes in so she goes in to pay for it. Well, the clerk did not take away the part, like she did the speeding ticket part, or took care of part of it, and that part was okay, but forgot to document the that she brought in her proof of insurance. So because she brought that in, that was just forgiven. Well, the clerk forgot to document that. So my friend that is a veteran, served our country, is this honorable woman. She now has a nonprofit that helps vets prevent suicide. She was taking a bunch of vets to go get certified for their scuba thing for one of their trips. And she walks out of Walmart and she gets arrested because there was a warrant for her arrest because that clerk never missed the thing
such
on
a glaring
the proof
example.
And it was on a Friday.
Of course we need to arrest these people.
Yes. So then it's on a Friday. So she's in literally like
for the whole weekend.
Orange jumpsuit.
Right. In the room where they don't fucking clean out the drain.
That's why I say
those places are gross, but
all those people need to be shamed in the very least. But frankly, they need the rope. They need.
What we need to do is we need to have on-chain systems, right? We need to have on-chain systems,
right? Well, I had
if
a
you
similar
want to really
situation.
make sure that people can't drive without insurance, then you should have a system where the car starts, temporarily checks the blockchain to make sure that your insurance is in place, and then lets you keep driving it.
Yeah, bringing it back to blockchain. Imagine if she paid all that stuff. She showed her insurance and all that, and because it was all on a publicly accessible blockchain, your friend could check to make sure everything was taken care of, like the next day.
Well, it
would have headed that off. I had a friend who had a ticket that they thought they paid like a couple tickets, but one of them was going through a stop sign. So it was like it wasn't part of the fine. They were gonna like take a course or something but there was supposed to be another court date, and it was running a stop sign, and they were in a town 2 towns over, not that far away. They're like probably like 30, 40 miles, and they got pulled over, and it's a hardcore town, Lampasas. They arrested them because, oh yeah, the warrant out of Killeen, and they were in jail, and they called the Killeen Police Department like, hey, you got to come extradite this guy for this warrant. And Killeen's like, yeah, we don't really have a lot of officers. We'll get to it as soon as we can. 3 weeks. 3 weeks they sat in the jail.
Oh my God.
And couldn't pay the ticket, couldn't do anything because they had to. They were
It had
at the
to happen in the
bureaucracy. They had to have a cop come from Killeen to go to Lampasas to pick them up, and then finally they just released him.
These are the kinds of things that happen way more often than you think. Like with Lisa's example, something similar happened to me where, and also in that example, if you can identify me, you should be able to identify that I have active insurance. Like it's a thing.
Well, but
you
also
should be able to identify that piece of information. But I almost lost my job because of a vehicle related like Department of Transportation thing. I was working as a technician for a company that required a driver's license, right? And I sold a car, and the person I sold it to didn't go register it in his own name. He just went out and drove it around, didn't get insurance on it. Right. And he got into a car accident. And then when he got into a wreck,
your name was still hooked to it.
He gave my name because he knew he was in trouble because he was already on an expired license. And next thing I know, my license is revoked.
That's
right.
Well,
I find out from my company. Right? My company calls me and they're like, Dave, you can't work here anymore because you don't have a license and valid driver's license anymore. And this is how I find out about the whole thing. Right. So I find out by being fired, basically.
Dude, bureaucracy.
I'm like, yo, pump the brakes a little bit. We can validate all of this. That none of this is true. We can do this. And it took me like 2 or 3 weeks with Tallahassee, with the state of Florida, to like figure all this shit out and be like, no, this wasn't even me there. What are you talking about?
Of course, we're going to assume that we need to sort the paperwork first. This bureaucracy is passive aggressive state.
Meanwhile, my means of survival, my job is threatened while the paperwork gets shuffled around with enough people, and I'm calling around different offices.
And the burden's on you to fix
and nobody even fucking apologizes to you.
Luckily,
you're talking
my company wanted me, so they believed me.
You're talking about they should be able to see that you have insurance and blah blah, so it depends.
My question is, why do we need to have insurance as a requirement?
It depends on the person who's there. I had
if it's a good product,
horrible thing happen to me similar to that. We were over. It was Mother's Day because we're at my parents' house, and the next morning I had to go outside to look at something. Get the paper. It was something, and I went out, did it, turn around, shut the door, and something was off. And I was like, wait a minute. I opened the door again. And I was like, something just was. Oh, my car's gone. So I was like, hey, I make sure my wife was, did you take the, no, the kids had gotten the car before and took the brake off and it rolled down the street like once before I checked. Like someone actually stole my damn car. That was just insane. So I called the police. I think someone stole my car. And then I was like, maybe it got towed. It was, something. And then, no, it was actually stolen. Blew my mind.
Huh.
And then then the police come over, they take the report, and they get this call. And they say, we found your car. It's in a field by CTC, by this college. So we go out there, and there's like people there. There's there was my town police came and brought me there, and then there was the college police. Then there was the county sheriff there. But then Killeen police came.
It's a lot of documentarians.
Right? Killeen police come. Everyone's nice. Oh, your car got stolen. It's terrible. Blah, blah, blah. But everyone's being weird, right? And then the Killeen police come, and this dude is an ass. He gets out and starts pushing on me. And he's like, "Where were you last night?" I'm like, "I was at my mother's. It was Mother's Day. It's where they picked me up."
Why are you asking me about it? I'm here with my car stolen.
Come to find out, my car was stolen. The guy went and raped a woman, used it in a robbery, and then it was a high-speed chase onto the post. So they were tracked by military helicopters, as well as the police helicopter came from Austin. There was this huge chase, and they ditched the car in a field, and then the woman was running naked in the highway. And the cops like, you did it. You're this is a lie. Your car wasn't fucking stolen. You're under arrest. What? And I'm like, no, screw you. It's like, I just gave you an alibi. Who else can prove you were there? It's like my mom, my stepdad, my kids. I have 2 sets of twins. They're my,
Dude,
you know.
And also, don't fucking tell me you don't have my cell phone pings.
It's like because and then the moronicness of it. No, because we busted into your house last night and you weren't there. And I'm like, and I live in another town, and I'm like, I just said I was at my mother's house for Mother's Day, so I wouldn't have been home. And now I'm thinking they kicked in.
Now you know. Yeah.
By the way, can you give me an inventory of all the shit you appropriated?
Yeah.
And that's another police department, because that was my town's police department.
Fucking Christ.
But then it's like, well, we're gonna have to dust this for fingerprints, and then it starts raining, so they can't dust it for fingerprints. Which I didn't know that happened. But if it rains, all the fingerprints are gone. And it's like, oh, the fingerprints are gone. We definitely want to arrest you. So then the cops, like my cops, are arguing with their cops. Like, no, he said he was at his mother's house. We picked him up from there. And he's like, no, we want to take him to Killeen. We want to arrest him. And it was just so weird.
That is bananas.
Just ended on the whoever was involved. Yeah, pretty nuts.
Yeah,
I mean,
my wife sees shit like this happen, and she asks me, like, aren't there, like, so in Germany, you've got to have a degree to be a cop. You got to have some education. You got to have some, some critical thinking skills. And from my experience of being over there, they're not like douchey assholes typically. Like I don't see a cop and like here, I'm not against all cops and all that, but when I see a police officer in the United States, I get nervous. I don't feel safe and protected. I'm like, oh shit, there's a cop. And I don't have that same response over there for whatever reason. So there's definitely room for employment or for improvement in the way that the police forces operate.
I think they should have to stake some tokens before they arrest anybody. Like if they do a wrongful arrest, they should lose their stake.
It's an interesting concept. Yeah,
I grew up there, and I remember it was so weird because the bullets I had massive power that was there's no way it was even near it in the United States. However, I can tell you now, police get away with so much here. You can just look at watch an old cop show. You couldn't shoot somebody without planting a gun or a knife or something, because you would lose your badge. You would go to jail. You couldn't shoot an unarmed person, and now you can shoot an unarmed person. It's not uncommon.
I agree with that. They have more.
It's like terrible but lawful or something.
They have more power over there, but there's shit they're not supposed to be able to do here. They do anyway.
If you touched a cop, like here, a cop couldn't do more than you would do. Like if you were like, hey man, you like bump them, they would bump you back a little harder. But there, I mean, if you were disrespectful, they had those rubber billy clubs that like they whack you one time and then
you want to see some nightmare cops. Paris.
A friend of mine, he had a boombox, and he was blasting it out in the economy, and the police came and took his boombox. And they're like, your parents, you need to come and pick this up at the police station. So his father was an officer, goes in there, and he just starts yelling at the cops, going off on I'm an American, how dare you do that? And the chief brings the boombox out. And he's like, this one, right? And he's like, yeah. And just stomps it.
Oh.
Stomps it and says, here you go.
Yep. Bureaucracy is passive aggressive.
And the guy was like, he was like, oh, he's like, you said it all, dude. You're an American. You are not a base. You're on my country. I'm the law. And you're really disrespectful. So here's your broken shit. Get out of my police station.
Right. And then next step for him was probably civil lawsuit, because that would have been kind of an open shut win. But
that's the thing. I don't know if it would be.
I'm watching. Anyway. That Greg was right. If they had to apply some level of risk to arrest this bro, it's an obvious thing. I have everything I need. I'm going to put half of my yearly salary up that I'm not wrong about this, versus, wait a minute, maybe I need to check a little bit more instead of just wielding this power, right? That's
don't they already do that?
Not really.
No. They don't risk a lot. Like if you get arrested, and if you didn't do it, can't you sue for?
Yes, but you're going to have to be someone with the right amount of resources to do that. On top of the fact, if it's a federal employee, they'll retire early, but they're going to be.
You can sue if you can afford the time and money.
You can sue for anything
it takes to sue.
But you're probably not going to win because of qualified immunity. So you probably won't even be allowed to have your case heard. So I think we have time for one more question real fast, maybe lightning round, and then we can close it out. Unless you guys want to call it.
Sure. That's a good.
I think there's only one more question.
There's one more.
Perfect. All right. So the question is, and this we're going to do lightning round style. So how blockchain technology and AI can work together to make the world a better place. Cool. That's a great one.
Yeah, I'll go.
We talked about this at length.
Validating the training material that AI builds upon.
Yep.
Lightning round.
That's huge. Handling the liability and the proof that you followed all of the best practices, all the due diligence in providing that, and the acknowledgement that the user understands that this is from AI. It could be wrong. The training could have a bug. Here's the training. We can reproduce exactly what you saw. This is what you saw.
AIs can be incorruptible stakers in proof of stake systems.
Yes.
I pass. This is not my wheelhouse.
I think making it transparent, everyone being able to see the growth, every decision it's made, and what it's working on and what it's doing, and also what information is being put into it.
You know what else? Something that is usually not looked at is an actual marketplace. That if you had a describable need, that you could apply AI to it and let them compete and actually have real rewards so that people have a reason to build a better AI or train a better AI for that purpose. Yes.
Absolutely. Okay,
like
so
Auto Signals comment, AI to help validate the data that's entered onto the blockchain, because even though we have blockchain, it's still, if it's entered by a human, there's still room for error. So
that's a good point.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of the inverse of how I was thinking.
I mean, if you had an
blockchain
AI, for
helps
instance,
but
like making sure you were sending to the person you wanted to send it to, that would be helpful. Like if you
or
like,
validate
the problem
you
what?
really want to pay this person, or are you really meaning to pay this person over here because this is what I think.
Why aren't fact checkers AI and on the blockchain?
Well, they are. That's like everything Facebook does. Now, Twitter is woke people in ivory towers. But as I understand it, Facebook is AI, and it is tuned to do this. That's why AI is very easily corruptible. And if you have a blockchain to show how you're training, it would be helpful.
It's also kind of being charitable to call it intelligence in this day and age. Yet it's really more of a dumb pattern recognizer. You could train a dog to spot those patterns more
fancy if then
reliably.
If then else, just it's the same shit as it ever was.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and there's also a fair argument
AI in a presidential debate or anything that, you know, like when the former vice president says a 9mm will blow the lungs out of the body.
You could have a real-time closed-captioned AI fact checker.
AI
there are closed
That's an easy one. There's some things that are super easy. You're right. I also like the idea of fuzzy logic with AIs too, instead of it just being a deterministic thing one way or the other.
Well,
just being like, this seems iffy or ish. That
it's a score.
You
need a score because it's like you can have thresholds.
Guys, there's also a fair argument made that AI is just everything computers can't do yet.
Might be. It's probably pretty good.
But isn't it a computer doing it
than anything?
I don't know.
It's all how do you say it? There's a spectrum. It is a gray, you know, there's if you could call humans intelligent, then there would be
Huddle Signal is right though. Twitter is also bot checked.
Okay. Yes.
They queue up the ivory tower with stuff to look at.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Bot signals.
Yeah.
In any case, I think that this has been a fantastic episode, but you know, it's such a hard topic to reduce to even running over like we are right now. Because there's so many different ways you can change the world with foundational level changes to tools that improve its ability to expose the truth and to keep people from hiding the truth, which is really super important. And that's at its core what you can do with this technology once you understand how it works and if you're creative enough. But we're going to get to that only if every single person who can create does create. So that's on all of you and all of us together to give it a try and to try to make the world a little bit better. I guess that would be what I would say before we jump into, hey Joe, what's up this week?
No, that was a perfect ending. That was perfect. Dealing with regulators, dealing with evil, finding weird patterns that you didn't expect, And we have a couple of projects that are looking to launch soon. There's a lot of exciting stuff happening in the utility side of the world with Dragon Chain. And there's a lot of exciting things happening, even, some of the bad stuff going on. So I don't know. That's not really saying a lot, right? Oh, I was on, I don't remember the name of the network, but there's a libertarian named Alex Newman. Has a great show, but it's on the My Pillow Guys network, right? And so cool. I was on that again live yesterday. As soon as it's available for rebroadcast, we'll share it. But it's actually great. I mean, it's very short, right? Because he has these very small segments, but it's usually really fun because we're on the same wavelength. So he's like a normie who is very excited about what I tell him, but he doesn't hear it anywhere else. So I'll tell him about how you could use it to the voting. You could use it to prevent our Orwellian future that we all know we're headed towards, right? There's a lot of really cool conversation in that very short segment. Yes, yesterday. So anyway,
cool. Dave, what's up with you? What's new this week?
So I'll just extend an invite to anybody who liked what I was talking about with regards to recapturing some of the value that's being sucked out of our local communities by companies like Facebook and or Twitter and a lot. If you want to experiment and help build a system that inverts that to where we can keep things local and benefit the people that are creating the value in the first place, go sign up for Den.social. It's a free account. We just take an email address and we have human evaluators. So your content may be pushed out of sight, but if it happens, it's because people decided to do that. It isn't some bot or AI that's willy-nilly marking certain keywords as bad words and stuff like that. So we have got a pretty good system over there. And I guess that's all I'll go with today. Yeah.
And you can use any email address you temporarily have access to, and then maybe
sign up. Well, the idea with the email, right? Yeah. The idea with the email address is just so there's a place to contact to talk to you from customer support, things like that. Cool. That's not even as needed as much as it used to be because we have DM systems and we have chat rooms and stuff now that weren't there in the beginning.
Yep. So anon's welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, if so, we have different layers. Since now this is an interview about Den, we have different layers, and if the layer that you subscribe to has decided as a DAO to allow anonymous posting in their layer, then yeah, you can do that. I know we have our very first anon only layer, which is the conspiracy theory layer, which was brand new from last month, I think. So that's pretty interesting. I've seen a couple of initial posts on there, but what I'm really waiting for is the original research to start showing up. So if you want to do that without doxing yourself, be reasonable, but basically conversations allowed on Den.
Yeah. Yep. LavaBit's back, by the way, so you can use them to sign up for an email address.
Are they? I didn't know that. Cool. Good to know.
Indeed. Lisa, what's up with you? What's new?
Suspicious offhand, but I'll look into it.
Interesting. I'll have to find out what that is. So I've got my daily show, weekday show, 4:00 Central, on Twitter, the YouTubes, and Odyssey. And Sean and I do a show every Tuesday together. And just kind of kicking along with that. I'm back homeschooling. So my year 2, made it through year 1 of homeschooling, back at it for year 2. And we haven't even cried once this year yet. So
awesome.
Doing well.
Awesome. Sean, what's new in your world?
I have the Lazy Crypto Show tonight on the Huobi network. I don't know if Dragon Chain's on. Is it on Huobi?
I don't think so. I don't know what that is.
It's the biggest exchange in Asia.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. You look.
Which usually we had like 5 to, I think we had 25,000 on stream, like one night. But we usually have about 5,000 people on there. It's usually pretty big. Me and Darko from Crypto Tonight, and sometimes our buddy AJ shows up. That's Friday night, most of the world, but it's Thursday night tonight. I think it's like 11 Eastern, that we go on. I got Tuesday, Truth Tuesdays with Lisa. The meme review I need to get done this weekend or Friday probably. Hodl Signal has said so many things that are like profound. One was who would have thought that in the U.S. would have political prisoners, their own citizens. That, and just when I see Washington and when I hear one of the senators from Texas say, he always talks about, we're here in the people's house, and it's surrounded by military and barbed wire protecting it, and those people from their own citizens is just it's so depressing. But something Hodl Signal said, you put it up before, if you put it up again, when government fears people, there's liberty. When people fear their government, there's tyranny. Yep. And I think that has changed a little bit. Not the first part, that is always just like a basic truth. But what has changed is when people fear the government cutting off their dependents, it's a whole different kind of fear. They're not afraid of the government. I mean, they are. People are afraid of the government coming after them and doing terrible things to them. But cutting off their, that money, people have become so dependent on it. It's a whole different kind of slavery that has been created.
Yep. Well, I mean, and moreover, there's a middle ground too, right? Like if you're apathetic towards your government and you're not paying attention to them, there will not be liberty, even if there isn't tyranny.
It'll sneak up on you.
You got to take the time to make them fear you.
Hey, I have to butt in. I know I did my thing already, but Joe, do you want to plug open source money real quick, because that's been released.
I was going to do that. I was going to do that for you.
Oh, okay. As long as it gets covered, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah. So since Joe didn't mention it, and it's very much worth mentioning, Open Source Money, the documentary. Tell us about that quickly, Joe.
Right. So it was a six episode documentary on the crypto world and how the powers that be are coming after U.S. innovation. And it covered a lot of projects. I mean, he interviewed everyone from Charles Hoskinson to Brock Pierce to I'm trying to think who else made it. A lot of different projects.
Crow was in it, wasn't it?
Yeah, Crow was in there. Crow cried a bunch in there. Is what he.
Wow. Usual thing.
Yeah,
was in there. A lot of
Where do you find it? Where is
it? Was really good. It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube. So if you go to the Vision Tree channel, it's right there.
Is it also on Rumble and Odyssey?
Not at the moment.
Ooh, somebody should get it up there.
Right. No, I think maybe it isn't on Odyssey. We had that's the intent. So
I actually a copy and it'll be up there soon.
Yeah, maybe I'll still do it, but I was going to do a watch party and where it went out to Odyssey, but something came up that got in the way of that, so that didn't happen. Maybe we still do a watch party. Maybe we can do a watch party. I don't know. If one of you wants to get in,
I'll have to sign out whenever I'm on there because my voice sounds like oh my god, I can't listen to that, right? Or at least maybe I'll just mute during those segments. But
you didn't have your wizard beard either. So.
We should do that. Maybe we should do that. Invite some more people on, but we can have a watch party, and Crow can come on and cry all over again, right?
Yeah. I know a couple of people I can reach out to that are would be worth having on and would be interesting. Maybe we can put that together since it didn't happen.
That needs to be like
it was supposed to happen on launch day, but the world got in the way.
No. Cool. So go up there and watch it. Trying to get the views up, and it's in advance of all the things going on. So
rock and roll. Well, for me, I guess I'll just say Rivet is out there waiting for you if you're ready to start building. If you have the courage to start building something that can change the world for the better, we're here to help. Rivet.cloud will get you on endpoints for too few networks as it stands, but we're working on expanding that. Tighten up that courage and go build something, because the world's not going to get better if we don't all try.
Yep. Perfect.
Catch everybody later.
Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best.
Adaptable, raw capital, label radical yet rational. A tactical approach is palpable if this animal is fallible, but that conclusion is laughable. So with for all detachable from the mandible, you see it now.